If you're building your ABA company and you're tired of guessing, this is for you. We built the eBCBA blueprint to give you real structure, systems, and support without the fluff. Details are in the description.
Patrick is with FirstWork, and it's really a great app. So he's going to do kind of a showcase on it, show us how we can digitize our lesson delivery. So Patrick, take it away.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here and to share a little bit about FirstWork. Before we jump into it, would love to just talk a little bit about some of the dynamics around lesson delivery, and then we can jump into FirstWork itself. So as I'm sure everyone knows here, there is a big need to have materials for lessons that you're going to deliver, especially if you're doing things like discrete trial training, which often involves all of those physical flashcards. And over the course of the development of ABA as a field, there have been a number of different ways that people have approached creating the materials and then actually delivering the lessons inside of sessions. And so there have been two main ways that people have made materials for most of the history of ABA, and then recently with the introduction of FirstWork, there are now new options with digital lesson delivery. But to quickly do a rundown, the main options that folks have for materials are either to purchase big sets of cards. These are available through providers, and you can have basically cardboard cutout images of any kind of visual stimuli that you need. The big challenges with this, of course, are that you need to purchase these big sets, which are often quite expensive because of essentially the intellectual property associated with this. And that has big costs, especially because cards are often lost or damaged. So if somebody loses, all of the cards for a specific target, then you're sort of in a bad position because you need to, find some way for that, for you to have that access to that material if you need it. So that introduces the second main way that people typically make materials, which is something that emerged especially as the internet became more populated with images of just about everything. And that is, of course, printing and laminating materials for lessons. So this is the most common way that people currently make materials. You go online, you source images for whatever type of visual stimuli you like, for instance, a kangaroo, and then you download that image, set it up, and print it out, and then laminate it, and then you're ready for a lesson. But of course, this introduces a lot of time costs and, of course, the cost of these actual materials themselves. Paper isn't cheap, neither is lamination or, of course, color printing, which is quite expensive over time. So that is all of those kind of direct material costs. And then, of course, you have other costs associated with having the team spend time on actually doing this work of going online and finding these images and then printing them out and laminating them. So while that process is less expensive on average than making your own cards, it introduces a lot of new dynamics surrounding this new workflow of getting all these materials ready. And of course, you either have to pay your team members to do this, or it's something that has a kind of negative impact on culture if it's sort of more of an expectation than something that is covered through admin time. So this whole process has a lot of challenging dynamics, and that's not to mention how those lessons are actually delivered. That's the main reason why we decided to build FirstWork, which is an application which allows you to deliver those lessons digitally, so you can take advantage of the tablets that you already have and then deliver those lessons directly through that device. So it's a neat new option to deliver lessons just on a tablet as opposed to using those physical cards. And of course, it is a lot less expensive than having to make those cards. It's typically about 25% of the cost of the printing and laminating process and far less expensive than purchasing your own card. So it's a very cost-effective option. Given that teams already have access to tablets, it's something you can just kind of get set up and then not need to worry as much about creating all those materials on a recurring basis. So with that, we'd love to quickly show you what FirstWork can do, some of those main capabilities, looking at the types of goals that we can work on, the types of customization options that we have, and then our reward system, which is a neat way to keep the learning focused and rewarding. So to start off, we've opened up the FirstWork application and we're seeing what is called a parental gate. So this is something that makes it a little bit more challenging to get into the back end of the application for all those curious learners who might be pressing around in applications that you don't want them to have access to. So quickly, we will answer that question. Next, we will see that we have our pin screen here, which is another way that we kind of keep the back end of the application private from learners' access. So here we can enter in our pin and we'll see that we have these student profiles. Student profiles are essentially unique data sets that allow us to track the progress of one learner independently of another learner. So you can start to really bring these profiles to life by customizing settings and having them saved there, having custom programs there. And then, of course, all the progress that you're making will be stored in that student profile so you know what one learner is doing relative to another. And so here we have a couple different profiles and we can go and select on one of these like student 3. So now we're here in the dashboard of FirstWork and would love to show you a couple things that we can do with the application. So just quickly to start, we have a lot of different learning goals that you can work on inside the app. You can work on pre-academic skills like matching, receptive identification, feature function class analysis, expressive language, sound to letter sound matching. You can also upload your own matching images, which is a new feature that we're quite excited about. On top of that, we also have some academic goals that you can work on for those learners who are in that academic arena, things like arithmetic, reading, and some of those really fundamental early skills like counting. So little mix of early academic with pre-academic skills, really focused on the goals that are relevant for many autistic learners who are between the ages of about 3 and 8. So before we jump too deeply into the types of goals that are inside of FirstWork, I would love to show you some of the customization options we have, because of course, one of the big benefits of DTT is that it's so customizable. So quickly we can go into the settings here and we'll see that we have all sorts of different options of things that we can customize inside of the application. We have settings that allow you to customize lessons on the fly with the session adjustment toolbar. We can do identical match to sample. We can change the speaker voice. We can change the error correction from essentially errorless to no show to off. We can slow down or speed up the pace of the lesson depending on what's appropriate for the learner we're working with. We can pare down the field or not depending on your preferences. We can go into what is in effect probing mode, where if you get the incorrect answer, we'll move on to the next question very quickly, which is nice if you're looking at just assessing current knowledge and not teaching. You can change how fast the speaker speaks, and we even have some cool neat features like this one, which allows you to hide the answer options until the SD has been completed. Fun story there, we actually learned about this dynamic that some learners have where they answer questions really quickly on the application, sometimes making mistakes because they don't have the time to really kind of pay attention to exactly what's happening on the screen, even if they are likely to find the correct answer in the first place. We learned about this from our research team who's doing a big study on FirstWork, and decided to build this feature in with that kind of dynamic in mind. And it's been something that's been really helpful for a lot of those learners who are super quick to answer, and kind of goes to our general philosophy of how we build our features, which is really based on feedback from folks who are using the application. So really neat feature there, probably my favorite one personally. And on top of that, we have a few other options that you can control. But just important to note that at the global lesson setting level, you're able to customize lots and lots of details of a DTT trial, very similar to what you would do with traditional cards. So you can really create programs that meet the needs of your learners. On top of that, I would love to show you a little bit about our focus and reward system. So the most unique thing about FirstWork is the way that we provide a little bit more structure to learning than just a simple learning application. And the way that we do this is with our reward app system. So fun applications that you select using this parental control-esque filter will be limited during your lesson. So here, for instance, the golf battle application will not be available to us while we have questions that we are supposed to be answering. This allows you to kind of keep that focus on the learning and disallow some of those distractions that are really common in the digital environment, given that there are typically other applications which are pretty fun on the device. The really cool thing about this too is that after your lesson is completed, you can actually earn time on these existing fun applications as a reward for the lesson that you just completed, which provides a really nice universal style reward, given that everybody has something that they like on a tablet. So, two learners can have two entirely different preference sets, but yet be earning something that's really meaningful for them through this reward app system. Having looked at some of those core customization options and that reward system configuration, we can now take a look at launching a lesson and see how quickly you can do that. So here at the top, we have these preset programs. What these allow us to do is save a program to a student profile so we can quickly pull it up and launch it with one click later. So here we're going to hold down to create. We'll go in and we'll see that we have all of these modalities for learning that we've already taken a quick glance at. We can select receptive ID. Just to give you a sense of the scope of the content that we have inside of FirstWork, there are thousands of targets with multiple exemplars, all categorized nicely for easy access. So here we can go and take a look at something fun like animals, for instance. So we'll go do animals and insects. And if we scan through, we'll see that there are just a whole ton of animals in here. Just about any animal that you're going to find in a book or outside, you can find in this set. So we can select a handful of these. Maybe we'll select some of these animals in the A's and B's, and then we'll press next. And we can do that final level of customization where we're going to configure some of the final details for this lesson. So you can do field size of 1 to 10 on tablets and 1 through 9 on mobile devices. So that's really easy to customize here. Lesson difficulty is a really neat feature that changes how similar the distractors are to the correct answers. So in an easy lesson, the distractors are going to be very dissimilar from the correct answer. For instance, they would not be animals. But in a hard lesson, all of the distractors are going to be quite similar to the correct answer. In this case, they would all be animals. This allows you to make lessons a little bit more difficult just using stimulus control, essentially. Next, we can do a couple of the final customization options here. We can edit the lessons per session. So lessons per session is the number of learning intervals that are going to be in this broader experience. So if we do 2 lessons per session, we'll answer a set of questions, have a period of reward, and then answer another set of questions, and then we will be done with our learning experience. So here, just so we have time for that reward period, we can do 2 lessons per session. Questions per lesson is the number of questions we have to answer to get to that reward period. So here we can do 5 questions per lesson. And then reward per lesson is the amount of time that we will earn on our fun applications after the lesson has been completed. So here we can do 1 minute of reward period, and then we can name this something that we'd like. We'll call it animals, for instance. So here we will press save, and then we'll see that that animals program that we just created is here on the preset menu. It'll be available for you in this Student 3 profile whenever you need it, and all you have to do is press down and select launch. We won't get into this in detail right now, but something worth mentioning is that you are able to actually copy these presets and share them with other people. So one of the really nice things about digital lessons is that it's really quick to kind of communicate about DTT and share these programs within teams, further creating some nice efficiency benefits of having the digital app instead of having to kind of build programs with actual physical cards, which are quite difficult to share. But with that, we can go and press launch, and we'll see this animals program. So here we have our first array. It's an array of 9. And we are looking for the bear. So here we'll get the incorrect answer and our errorless system will kick in. And every time this happens, we're going to pare down the field, shuffle things around so that you don't have the opportunity to rely too much on the position. And then we will be able to move on to the next question once we find that correct answer. So here, similarly, we're going to go and look for this skunk here. We'll select that correctly. And we have a couple more questions to answer before we move to the end of the lesson. So here, as we're approaching our final question, to see what that focus system looks like, if we scan outside of FirstWork right now, we'll see that all these fun applications that we previously selected are not available. So if we try to go to Google, to Golf Battle or Chess or any of these fun applications that we have here, we are not able to access them as indicated by them being grayed out like this. But once we complete this lesson, we will be able to access these applications for a minute as we designated previously. So really neat system to be able to kind of gate these fun applications and then afterwards provide access to them as a reward. So here we're going to find the ant really quickly, and then we will reach the go play screen, which means that we have completed our first lesson. We're now in reward time. So as we'll see here, all of these fun applications are available to us for 1 minute. So here we can open up the Golf Battle application. We could spend our minute here as we'd like. And then after that minute has elapsed, we will actually be brought back to FirstWork in order to answer a couple more questions. And then we will be done with this learning experience. So to spare us all that minute of Golf Battle and my incredible skills at that, we can jump back into FirstWork and go and take a look at some of the other components of the application here. So here we're going to switch to parent mode, which allows us to get into the back end of the application. We can stop our lesson here. And we can take a look at some of the progress that we've recorded here. So here we had previously done a receptive ID lesson, and we'll see that if we filter by animals and insects, we'll have some of these goals that we were previously working on. We can take a look at bear, for instance, which is one that we got incorrect. And we have all of the different goals that we've been working on inside of the application available here. And you can track the progress that you're making over time because all of that is recorded automatically. You don't need to worry about tracking the data while you're actually delivering the lessons, which is something that RBTs typically really find quite beneficial. Of course, it's quite difficult to run an ABA session. There's a lot going on all at the same time. And so delivering lessons, paying attention to the learner that you're working with, setting up that next array, and then recording the progress is kind of a big ask in just a really short period of time. So having it set up like this allows you to really focus on the learning that's happening and being a supportive technician, and less on needing to be as focused on some of those procedural components like recording the progress that's happening, which is of course quite difficult because you need to remember that and make sure you're keeping on top of everything all at the same time. Finally, you can also generate a report if you'd like. So all of the progress that you've made, you can create a nice little report for, and then you are able to take a look at that on a more meta level on top of just looking at it on a per target level. Having taken a look at FirstWork at a high level, I'd love to talk a little bit about how this translates into saving a lot of time and resources across the organization. So as we've seen here, these lessons are really easy to set up, really quick to deliver and track. And then, of course, they don't require any of those physical materials that are typically needed to deliver these types of lessons. Usually you would either have a big set of flashcards that you purchase somewhere, or you would have a bin full of these materials that are ready for you to access to do these lessons. There's a number of benefits to moving away from this setup. First, there's just a lot of time spent inside of sessions on getting all of this ready. So if you look at a FirstWork lesson, it's typically about 4 times faster than you can do a traditional lesson. And that's exclusively because you don't need to set up that next array, which is simply something that just takes some time. We're all bound by physics. There's, you can only set things up so quickly. And so when you're working with larger arrays and doing lots and lots of trials, it just takes a lot of time to get that next trial set up, which is essentially downtime for the learner and something that's kind of a procedural step for the technician. So being able to shift towards digital allows you to spend less time with a lot of those transitions and just be able to get going with your lesson and then move away from it as quickly as it's completed, which is much more predicated on how quickly learners can answer the questions than how quickly the technicians can set up the trials, which is currently the state of affairs when you're using traditional materials. Zooming out to the organizational level, the main benefits of switching to digital are that it is much less expensive than using traditional cards. Again, it's about a quarter of the cost because of all of that printing and laminating, which really does add up over time. And you already have access to the tablets, so you can use the resources that you already have available to you in those tablets and shift away from a lot of those ongoing costs, the most notable of which, in my opinion, is actually the time that's spent on creating these materials. Typically, BCBAs spend about 2 hours every week creating materials for lessons, and this is essentially administrative time, and depending on how that is set up in the organization, it's either something that, kind of is extra work that needs to get done and is not really very preferred for BCBAs, or is something that there really isn't a great time budget for, which leads to it being done after work hours or during other work activities, sort of taking away from some of the quality of that. In some polls, we've seen that about 75% of BCBAs either strongly disprefer creating materials for lessons or just do not prefer it. Only about 25% of BCBAs find this either enjoyable or very enjoyable. So on average, it's something that team members do not really like to do very much and sort of find on their plate. But of course, there's no real alternative. If you don't have access to the materials, you just can't do those lessons. And so it has to get done. People will certainly do it, but that doesn't mean that it's the absolute best setup. Being able to have access to everything in a digital format and then just launch those lessons really saves a lot of time and can be great for organizational culture because, of course, you can just take that off of BCBA's plates, creating more time for other things or even just a little bit more downtime for your team. So that is a really notable benefit of switching over to digital, is that you don't need to spend all of that time on the material preparation. Having sort of walked through the application and how it benefits teams and organizations, would love to open up here to questions. If anybody has any curiosities about the platform, would love to hear those, and we can take a look at anything specifically inside of the application or just talk at a high level about anything that sort of piqued anyone's interest about the system that we have.
Yeah, Patrick, this is awesome, and you obviously made a lot of improvements even since the last time we saw it. It looks a lot different. So on your when can you kind of go through the process of, like, say a BCBA who's building kind of their contents or resources for their BTs that are working under them to kind of set them up? Are there like little enclaves where you can set up your team and kind of customize for them, or how are your users managed in that hierarchy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So we have a new system that we've introduced. It's a little bit more of a broad sharing system. So you can even actually share with colleagues that you might not even work with. So the way that this works is every program that you can create inside of FirstWork has a unique lesson code. And so essentially it's a big string of text that will tell you, this is a receptive ID lesson, this is focused on these animals, this is the customization options that we put in here. And what you can do is you can share that preset code, as it's called, with anyone on your team or anyone that you'd like to share it with. It could even be a colleague, somebody from grad school that you think might benefit from checking out this program. And so what you can do is you can go into the application or to our website where we have a web version of this, create the program that you'd like, press copy preset, and then that will copy this string onto your device. The next thing you paste will be this lesson code from FirstWork. You can share that with anybody you'd like. And then what they can do is they can copy it themselves, go into their FirstWork application, press import, paste it in there, and then they'll have access to that very same program that you just created. So typically the program sharing is managed from that perspective, where you can create these lesson codes and then share them with people who need them. A lot of the time BCBAs will actually use the web version of this as opposed to the mobile version of this because a lot of the time they're on their computers. From the data perspective, a lot of the sort of data actually ends up in larger data collection systems like Essential Reach or Motivity or Rethink. Generally, the way that that works is the application is sort of a holding point for that information so that you don't need to worry about transferring it during your session. A lot of the time, if you're currently doing data collection, you're going to do 5 questions and then you're going to take a quick note on how that went. Then you're going to go back to the learning. With FirstWork, you don't need to worry about that component because it will be there at the end of your session. You can go into the view progress page, and then a lot of the time people will copy the information from the view progress page and just plop it right back into their data collection system so that it's then available in a broader organizational context longer term. So everything has been set up to be very agile and available to users of really all types, whether they're in a large organizational context or a smaller team. Or even if you're just collaborating, kind of in a more casual sense with folks that you know from the ABA community, and you've got this cool animals program, or you've done something related to an assessment that you think other folks might find helpful to speed up that step of an assessment. So you could kind of create that custom code and share that over with them.
Yeah, marketplace might be cool for that too, as you guys are building this out and making future improvements where people can kind of post their programs. Really
that would
cool.
be really neat. Yeah, I think that would be super, super cool. Whether it's because one of the things that's cool with DTT is that it's incredibly customizable, but a lot of the things that are relevant to one learner are going to be relevant to other learners. So there is a lot of value. And one of the things we've heard from organizations that have been using it is that they'll create their own internal libraries of programs. So they'll go and create programs based around assessments they do, or programs that are going to come up with a lot of new learners, have them saved somewhere, and then they can kind of access that long term. So you can really start to kind of build up a repository and just have access to that over a longer time horizon, where traditionally the programming component, which is kind of selecting what you're going to be doing and making the actual structure of the lesson concept, is pretty detached from the actual lesson delivery, because you can't share, the 89 flashcards that you're going to need for that program. It's just not really that practical. So this is kind of a new dynamic in that sense, where you can, kind of create a bit of a knowledge base and make use of it over time.
Really awesome. So what are your biggest, I know you have this out at a lot of ABA companies. What are your biggest takeaways in the area of outcomes, and then also on the, on the business side, as far as, obviously we're reducing time, but what has the delivery been like as far as, outcomes for the actual clients and time saved?
Yeah, so the most notable outcome that we've heard about really consistently is that these lessons just happen a lot faster than traditional lessons. And a lot of this is really, kind of in the physics domain more than it is anything else. There's just a lot of time related to that manual process of actually grabbing those cards, arranging them properly, setting them up the next trial. So lessons typically happen much, much faster, usually around 4 times more quickly than they traditionally would, which just creates more time for other things during the session, because you don't need to be spending as much time on setup. So folks a lot of the time will save a few minutes there every time they're doing their trials. Additionally, and kind of relatedly, because the application is something that you can pull up on a tablet, you don't need to go to a tabletop space, which is typically required for traditional DTT. So when you're doing a traditional DTT lesson, you and your learner need to be at a surface which is flat. It's sort of another physical requirement, and that is a kind of a larger transition. It might take a couple minutes to kind of move from one activity to being all set up and ready to go. But with an application version, you can kind of pull out the tablet. And if it's something that learners prefer doing, you can kind of just complete that really quickly. So a lot of the time, something that would take 2 to 5 minutes can go down to being essentially instantaneous. Obviously, this is dependent on your learners and all of the context, but a lot of that, kind of manual setup time, where you just need to go walk over somewhere, get the materials you need, go to the correct location, lay them out there, that just takes a lot of time. And so by shifting over to digital, you're able to cut out a lot of that sort of effectively downtime for learners, and really be able to, kind of create a little bit more flow inside of those sessions, not being as focused on some of those procedural steps from the technician's perspective. Zooming out from a more organizational.
And you kind of ran past a very important point, right? And that's like the environmental effect of not having to have a chair and a table, and being able to be in a more comfortable spot where your learner is more comfortable and in a physical position where they're more apt to be able to focus or whatever. Like, you can optimize that side of it by removing the table and chair from it. I think that's a lot bigger than you might be focusing on. But yeah, it's definitely, and everybody loves the tablets. All the kids love to mess with the tablets. So it kind of gamifies it in a way that, my 5-year-old daughter is obsessed with the Duolingo ABC, and she gets to play on the tablet all day.
Yeah.
And or when we're on a road trip, right, we're riding in the car for 2 hours. She's playing on the tablet and she's learning how to read. So mommy and daddy are okay with it, but
Yeah.
it definitely is more engaging to put something like this on a tablet to hold a young person's attention, for sure. So bravo.
Yeah. No, well, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely another kind of anecdotal piece that we hear all the time is, some learners just didn't really like the cards that much, and they're, kind of a big fan of the tablet. And so a lot of the time it can be a really nice transition and just sort of a different option that can be a better fit for some learners. So definitely a lot of benefits of, if you're pro tablet and, you kind of enjoy that, then, moving something onto the tablet just kind of creates more of that game-like feel. And you definitely make a great point about, the chair and the table setup is, it's not a very comfortable setting. It's kind of associated with, sort of sitting there and waiting, and it's just not the greatest environment for a lot of learners. And if there is a much more comfortable place, maybe you like a swing or a couch or just standing up, walking around, whatever works for you, that can be an option, where previously there was a lot of context that kind of made that not an option, even though, there's no reason why you couldn't answer those questions there, except for just that, you need the physical surface. So yeah, so there are a lot of interesting context benefits to shifting over for certain learners.
So tell us about your pricing structure and how somebody can get their hands on the app and start learning how to use it and see if they want to adopt it into their systems.
Yeah, absolutely. So our pricing structure is pretty simple. It's per device, and we have a subscription. So the base subscription price is $12.99 per device. On average, that's about a quarter of the cost of what folks would be spending on printing and laminating, especially if you bake in any of the time that's spent there. So it's usually a very cost-effective option and is something that's quite quick to get set up. It usually, you can sort of free pilot within a day. If you just reach out to us through our website, we'll provide that link there. You can sign up and get access to the application with no commitments, no information requested, just super simple to get going and see if it's a good fit for you. And then if it is a good fit, we can get those set up for organizations. And we, of course, do also have bulk discounts. So as you access more accounts, the price actually reduces below that $12.99 point. So depending on the size of organizations, the savings can be even greater.
And to be clear, it's $12.99 per device per month or per?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Very cool. I love it. I have one person who I'm going to be on the phone with here shortly. I'm going to tell her about this app because I know what they're doing for lessons, and it's PDF files and SharePoint.
Yeah, that's very common.
This is a lot easier.
Yeah, no, we did a really interesting poll recently, and it's about 75% of people are currently doing that. At this point, quite a large number of people are doing FirstWork, which is super, super exciting to see. But yeah, we'd love to see that number come down. I think BCBAs have, some of the most important jobs in the world and just do amazing, amazing work. And, printing and laminating and PDF and SharePoint and all that stuff is kind of more in the arts and crafts dimension than it is in the, kind of in the real value add dimension. So there's just a lot to being able to, free up some of that time.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna post this recording on the group. So if anybody wants to go back and watch this again, and we're gonna make sure that we have all the information to get your hands on the app. Patrick, you want to do a quick rundown, your website, how we get a hold of you, email, the name of the app, all that stuff, just to restate it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the name of the application is FirstWork, one word. You can find it on the App Store or Google Play Store. If you want to check it out that way, you can just give a simple FirstWork search and it'll be the first thing that comes up there. It has a blue seahorse logo. If you'd like to find us online and read more about us, we're very active on LinkedIn and on Facebook, so I'm sure you'll see us there in any of those groups. And our website is www.firstworkapp.com. So that is firstworkapp.com. And there we have a lot of details on the types of learning goals that we support and just a little bit more of a kind of detailed breakdown on everything in the application. And of course, there's great channels to access the application from there if you'd like. And if you'd like to reach out to me personally, my email is patrick@firstworkapp.com. I'm always happy to chat with anybody who's curious about the application, answer questions, or anything else. So please do reach out if it is something that's interesting to you. I would love to meet you.
Awesome, Patrick. Well, thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate the quick demo, and look forward to seeing this app develop, man. It's already awesome.
Well, thank you. Well, that's very kind of you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share again. So thank you both, and I hope everybody has a great one.
You're already doing the work, investing your time, your energy, and your vision. So let's make it count. Build something that works without breaking you. The eBCBA Blueprint is the way. Get started for free with our foundation course.